All right, so my study is the effect of student choice of tracking reading on students' turn in rate and their interest in reading. So in the abstract, I say the purpose of the study is to see the effects of student choice in tracking reading at home has on the students' reading level and their interest in reading. My homeroom class, consisting of 22 fourth grade students, will participate in the study. A pre-test of reading log turn-in rates and a post-test of turn-in rates when students have a choice will be used. A survey to measure students' interest in reading after using a student choice reading tracking system will be used. The results of the study show that students did have an increase in turn-in rates because of choice in reading tracking system, and the students' attitude about reading also increased. So the introduction here, I talk about how in my school we had mandated reading logs this year where every student was asked to turn in a reading log every week. And my question was really, what's a better way to increase motivations in students to read at home besides a reading log? And so I used a one group pre-test and post-test. The pre-test was students reading logs 2 weeks prior to the study, and the post test was their turn in rates when they had a choice for 2 weeks during the study. And then my single measurement design was a survey about their interests and attitudes about reading after. So my research that I did came up with some different things. One, the Center for Public Education says that reading is like the open sesame for acquiring knowledge, learning to read, and you can read to learn just about anything. So I think that sets up why it's so important that students read at home because we want them to be able to be lifelong learners and they've got to know how to read to do that. And then in an article, Reicher states that this research would suggest that reading logs had a similar effect on children's reading habits, especially their desire to read for fun, making reading less of a pleasure and more of a chore. So imagine telling your child that she must draw pictures for at least 20 minutes daily and also record how much time she spent drawing and how many different colors she used. This kind of really stated the downside of using reading logs. It really becomes a chore and it really becomes just something else you have to do instead of like instilling that love of reading in students. And then another article, Nair states that the same, they talk about a counter will, like every human has a counter will, so that if someone's trying to coerce them to do something, they will want to fight against it. So it talked about the same kind of counter will happens with activities like reading logs and many kinds of homework. When sitting down to read, feeling ready and able to do that while thinking, I can't wait to find out what happens next, we stimulate the brain growth and relaxation parts of our mind. But when we pressure to complete one chapter or 30 minutes as prescribed by someone else, who we may or may not feel connected to, the thinking turns to, I don't want to do this now, but I have to. I hate this. And so I think we can all really relate as teachers that we often tell students, I need you to read this one chapter, you need to read this many minutes. And that can be overwhelming for students. And then it turns into, I don't want to do this, I hate this. When really reading should be a pleasurable experience and it should be relaxing. So for my data collection plan, my participants were 22 fourth grade students. They were all ability levels. My materials was I had a student choice information that I presented to students. I had reading log data from 2 weeks previously, and then an attitude and an interest survey. My procedures. So I tracked reading logs for 2 weeks prior. I introduced the student choice system to the class and allowed them to explore. I had 4 different choices that they could choose from. I tracked their turn in rates after student choice for 2 weeks during the study. I gave the link to the students that had the ending survey, and then students completed their survey about interests and attitudes about reading before the study and after the study. So my quantitative data was the percent of students reading at home. So each of my students is listed below. The blue bars are before the study. So you can see there were some students that still had 100% turn-in rate. That means that they turned it in for both weeks. If it's right at that 50% line, that means they just turned it in for one week. And if they have nothing, that means they didn't turn it in at all. And so you can see before and after the study, there was some increases in turn-in rates. Not across the board, but quite a few. My qualitative data was a survey. So, for example, I asked if reading logs were helpful when tracking my reading at home. Very few said strongly agree. Very few. Most students were in the strongly disagree in the disagree column. Student choice system is helpful when tracking my reading at home. Many students thought it was helpful. You can see the strongly agree and agree sections here, but there were still, quite a few that disagreed and strongly disagreed, that they didn't find that very helpful. I enjoy reading at home more with student choice. More students did enjoy reading at home, knowing that they could choose how they wanted to track it, but there still were some that did not um, find that helped them enjoy reading. And then I enjoy reading at home with a reading log. Most students disagreed. There were a few that agreed with it, but nobody even strongly agreed with that. So that was pretty clear that that reading log didn't help them really enjoy reading. So the analysis of my outcomes, the student turn-in rates did increase because of student choice, and their interest and attitudes about reading increased because of their choice. So really I saw an increase in both overall. So I want to share this with the reading teachers in my building because it is a mandated thing to track reading, but maybe there's a more engaging way that teachers can do that instead of just a reading log. And then I want to share it with the students who participated in the study. I want them to see that they improved or they stayed the same or anything like that, and we can kind of talk about where to go from here. So I want to share that with those two groups. Thank you.